If you've watched part 1 and part 2 of this series, you saw how I used Manchester's conference, where they talked about Egypt in its African context, and we have now established, using the pillars of Egyptology, using these institutions, we've established that Nubia literally gave birth to the pharaonic culture in ancient Egypt. And here in part 3, we're going to be exploring the Near East in the going towards the pre-dynastic period, and we're going to be demonstrating now, using the Encyclopedia Britainnica, that the Sumerian kings and their society were not as advanced as the Egyptians were, nor was their kingdoms as united or as potent as Egypt was. So let's hurry up and get back into this. So at the Manchester conference, we see that Dr. Sakana, who was invited there, he presented the Nubian Kemetic culture complex starting from 7000 BC, and he talked about how you Eurocentrics will look at clear evidence and just simply ignore what you're seeing and make up a story. The next example is the obvious Africanness of Pharaoh Akhenaten, and you guys come up with excuses like the carving or incising instruments may have been blunted, which is completely made up and it's just hating anyway. But we're not here to talk about that. What we want to talk about is you guys claiming the Mesopotamian civilization shaped the influence of ancient Egypt, and that it wouldn't be nothing until it was impregnated by European and Mesopotamian influences. So before we start, let's make it clear that the Mesopotamians exerted influence on Europeans, not the other way around. Let's make that point clear. And now we're going to take a look and compare Egypt with the Sumerian kings. And we're going to come to a final determination on that using the Encyclopedia Britainnica and using Egyptian chronology. So let's hurry up and get started. Okay, here we have a basic table of the first kings that are in the kings list of the Sumerians. And as we see, this is all completely made up, of course, and there's no evidence that these people ever existed. So we might as well just call all these legends right here, because we know the Sumerians were not ruling for 432,000 years. That's, Y chromosome Adam and mitochondrial Eve DNA don't even go back that far. I guess the Sumerians were the kings of the Neanderthals or something. So we all know that's a fantasy, and we all know that's not real. Nobody was ruling for 28,000 years, 64,000 years. So Wikipedia says that the Sumerian kings list states that Kish was the first city to have kings following the flood, beginning with Jushur. And then his successor was actually a sentence in Akkadian, meaning all of them were lord. And some scholars have suggested that this may have been intended to signify the absence of a centralized authority. And that, but usually I don't use Wikipedia because I can't really trust most of the time what they say. So, a lot of these websites, they gave me the runaround. So I decided that the Encyclopedia Britainnica is a good basic resource for us to use. So let's go ahead and go to that. So the encyclopediabritannica.com, it's been updated in the year 2016. All right, so we have here, Sumer was first settled between 4500 and 4000 BC by non-Semitic people who didn't speak the Sumerian language, and according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, Sumerian language came later. All right, now the important thing that we see here is the Ubaidans were the first civilizing force in Sumer. So again, let's remember this, that when the so-called, specifically, white Caucasians, came into these areas later, if they did, let's remember that they came into civilizations that were already established. Let's please remember that, okay? We got to make sure that we remember that these civilizations were already established. Don't let these Eurocentrics tell you that they came in and created anything there, because they did not. There's no evidence for that. These people were already on a civilizing trajectory before that. We got to move on. So we see here in the Encyclopedia Britainnica, by the 3rd millennium BC, this area, Sumer, was the site of at least 12 different city-states. Okay? And each of these had a walled city, yada yada, blah blah. Alright, so we have 12 different city-states by the 3rd millennium BC. Alright, and so we know by this time, Egypt was well on its way already. Alright, so now we're going to compare. I have here an absolute chronology for early Egypt, and it uses radiocarbon dating and the Bayesian statistical modeling. And these are from the Proceedings of the Royal Society. And of course, our man, Mr. Wingrove, was involved in this. And this is an absolute dating chronology. And so, right here on the left, we have the Encyclopedia Britainnica. And it says, the first king to unite the separate city-states was Etana, ruler of Kush. Now, a lot of this stuff, you know, people want to argue it. But overall, it's going to be the same. It's going to be Kush. And it's going to be the same general like timeline about 2800 BC. All right. And we got to remember that we got to talk about kings that can be verified. Okay. And so round about 2800 BC, we got that. All right. Now look, after that, for about 400 years or so, we have them fighting each other, so that basically their kingship passed around to different cities. All right. So while the Egyptians have been stabilized into a state, the Sumerians were still fighting each other amongst the cities to see who could be the top mayor of the local town over there. All right. Let's remember that. And then later, Sargon was the one who finally united all of them. But that wasn't until about 2334 BCE, as we can see. All right. So what's important here is all that fighting rendered them vulnerable to external conquerors. So we see that at the time of the Egyptian Old Kingdom, the Sumerians were already being conquered by outsiders. First the Elamites, that was in 2500 BC. Okay. And later, the Akkadians came from the outside and conquered them. So we see these people have already been conquered, and not only that, they couldn't unify. All right, until Sargon. All right. So if you look at this chart right here, now the red line represents the uniting of these city-states. All right. Now the blue line right there, this blue line, that's about the time of Narmer right there. Narmer, King Scorpion, that's that generalized area right there where he's at. All right. And we see that he is way before the city-states were united under Kish. All right. This is important to remember. All right. We're using an absolute chronology here. This is all known. So it's important for us to remember right here that our king Narmer united Egypt long before the Sumerians were united. All right. And again, after the Sumerians united, they were defeated by outsiders. All right. And then the green line that I have right there, that's a generalized area that I have right there of the earliest evidence of the pre-dynastic kings of Egypt. So I want you to look at that table right there and see how much time is between the red line and the green line. So here we use science right now. You can download this paper. It's called An Absolute Chronology for Early Egypt. All right. And you'll see that this paper is very official. And this timetable right here is a generalized timetable of pre-dynastic Egypt. Okay. So here's the thing. It is officially established that the pre-dynastic kings existed prior to any verifiable kings in Sumeria. And certainly Narmer united Egypt before the Sumerians were united. Okay? And they say here that Sargon's dynasty, it only lasted for 100 years, but the fact that it united all these places, it created a model of government that influenced all of Middle Eastern civilization. So let's take a look at Egypt. King Narmer, he united all of those little smaller kingdoms down there in Upper Egypt, and he took Lower Egypt, and then what was born from that was the Egyptian state, right? Around 3000, 3100 BC. Let's remember that. This was a few hundred years before the uniting of Sumeria for that short amount of time that they were united, okay? And so, are you following me here, Eurocentrics? So now that we know that the Nile Valley Africans, namely the Nubians, gave birth to the Egyptian state, and if you missed part 1 and part 2 of my video about the Manchester Conference, you'll see that was established using pure science, where they explicitly laid that down for you. All right? They laid that down for you. I suggest you go to those other videos where I covered that, and I lay it out for you like kindergarten homework. Go back to that, then come back to this video. Okay? Pick up right here where we left off. Okay? And you see right here how much time is in between that red line and that green line. So what we have to say absolutely is that the Nile Valley Africans ruled as kings before the pretty much before the Sumerians did, and most definitely they had a full state before the Sumerians did. That's an absolute fact. So what's important is that blue line right there, and you see how much time it took for the Sumerians to do the same thing. Okay? Now, we see from this chart right here, that red line right there is the Sumerians, okay, uniting. And look again how all of that is after the fact, when the foundation of the Nile Valley Kings and their first dynasty. Again, this is before the Sumerians can even be verified as having an actual kingdom. All right, again, we're using established science here. So now that we know the ancient Egypt were tropical Africans born from the Nubians, we could say here that these Nubians gave birth to the earliest African kings ever there in the Nile Valley. And not only that, they did this independently. And not only that, they set up this potent foundation that lasted for thousands of years. So therefore, they're sitting here giving Sargon all this credit about uniting city-states that created a model of government that influenced all of Middle Eastern civilization. These pharaohs that set up this society, they influenced all of Nile Valley civilization, and they also influenced other civilizations that weren't anywhere near them. Okay? We need to remember that, because they try to give these Asiatics so much credit. You feel me? But Sargon, he came long after those pyramids stood high in the sky. All right? But we got to move on. Let's go back to this Encyclopedia Britainnica now. So here we see that Mesopotamia, it had no real geographic unity though. At the end of the day, it had no real geographic unity. You see what it says. And above all, no permanent capital city. So this site, Ancient Origins, you know, a lot of times it's a good site, but I can't trust this site anymore because they wrote on their site that the Sumerians had a capital at Ur, that the capital was the capital of the civilization. Okay, now, Ur was its own kingdom, yeah, but it's out of whack with the Encyclopedia Britainnica, which has a much higher reputation, period, than Ancient Origins ever had. And so, I would not suggest that you trust anything on that page now, because you see that they can't get their information right. All right. And we also see that they had no real geographical unity. And it's true. They were fighting each other all the time, and they didn't really have the Sumerian country who was the king of Sumeria for thousands of years. That didn't happen. You know, they had to wait until Sargon anyway in the Akkadians. But we got to move on. Right here we see that Mesopotamia stands out from other civilizations with greater uniformity, particularly that of Egypt. So here we see how these Mesopotamians and their form of civilization was different from that of Egypt. Let's remember that. And remember, they had a geographical unity. We got to remember that they also united different peoples that were not related to each other necessarily. Okay? So we got to remember that. So here we see yet another contrast between Egypt and the Asiatics. We got to move on. Here we see in the Encyclopedia Britainnica that large areas of Anatolia were infused with the culture of Mesopotamia from 1700 BC, which is yet even more evidence of the Mesopotamians passing high culture to areas that have generally been considered white. And of course, Anatolia was not fully 100% white Caucasian, as you want to call it, all right? Especially at this point. However, we're just going to go ahead and just call that area Caucasian, you know what I'm saying? Caucasian legacy, all right? Whatever, all right? Just to make a point, because the same story goes for Europe too. We see culture being passed to them, Mesopotamia. We saw the information of domestication of plants and animals was passed to them. You understand me? And everything else was passed to Europe and to the white Caucasians. It was not the other way around, okay? They don't write books about Europeans passing anything to Mesopotamia like that, all right? Anyway, we got to move on. So, right here, the Encyclopedia Britannica tells us, nonetheless, there is nothing in Mesopotamia to match the sophistication of Egyptian art. We didn't write that. The Encyclopedia Britannica wrote it. You see what it says. There is nothing in Mesopotamia to match the sophistication of Egyptian art. And it's absolutely true. So here we see that the Encyclopedia Britannica has admitted that the Mesopotamians were not as sophisticated as the Egyptians in the arts. Now what about the sciences? The Mesopotamians are supposed to be masters of science. But look what the encyclopedia says. The Mesopotamian science, they had a science of a kind, but it was not in the sense of Greek science. So here we see that the Mesopotamian science was not even on the level of the Greek science, and the Greeks themselves admit that they came to learn from the Egyptians. Okay? So wouldn't that put the Mesopotamian science below the Greek science? And the Greek science is certainly below the Egyptian science. And so again, this exposes more lies of how they try to imply that the Mesopotamians are somehow the civilizing force of the world. Maybe they were the civilizing force of Europeans, but they were not the civilizing force of the Nile Valley Africans. I'm using the Encyclopedia Britannica. I'm not boasting. You can see it. Okay, so we see right here, from its beginnings in Sumer, before the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, Mesopotamian science was characterized by endless, meticulous enumeration, ordering the columns in series. So basically, from its beginnings, and we see middle of the 3rd millennium BC is when these sciences were in their beginnings in Sumer, but their science mainly consisted of writing a bunch of numbers down. Alright, that's the Mesopotamian science. Now let's go over to Africa. Niche number 7, you want to talk about what science has established. Let's look at the field of pure science. Again, this was stated at Manchester, okay? The Nubian horizon stands out clearly as the paradigm upon which Kemet evolved. By the 7th millennium BC, there was the cult of the Gatto, incised drawings on rocks, megalithic structures, mapping the Orion constellation, the galactic center, the anti-galactic center, precessional equinoxes, measures of distances from the Earth to the stars and star masses. And some of these would, several thousand years later, be erected at Giza on an ancient foundation with the famous tri-pyramids and their astronomical coordinates, along with pictographic, petroglyphic, and other forms of writing iridescently illuminating the role of Nubia in shaping the nascent Egyptian state. Okay, so here we see, starting from the 7th millennium onward, we get to about 5800 BC or so, 5000 BC, we start seeing the mapping of the Orion constellation. And you see here, galactic center, anti-galactic sister, equinoxes, measurements of distances from the Earth to the stars and the star masses, all of that. And all of this was concentrated at the pyramids and their astronomical coordinates, which people drew all over every day. All right, so let's go back to the encyclopedia, look at Mesopotamia, science the Mesopotamians had of a kind, but though not in the sense of Greek science. And from its beginnings, before the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, Mesopotamian scientists was characterized by endlessly writing numbers down. Have a good day, Caucasians. Okay, that's what science has established. Phoenician number 7. No wonder they want to look at African stuff all day, look at Egyptian stuff all day, because when they go and look at their own stuff, it's nothing but boardroom. You're introduced to nothing but 3rd millennium people writing down numbers while the Nubians are over here mapping the stars. Okay, so again, here we have the Nubians creating the idea of a king very early, and then the sciences. Okay, you guys make a joke that black people talk about, oh, we were doing science so early. You see right here how it can be demonstrated. Okay, I'm using your own Eurocentric encyclopedia to show you this. Okay, and insofar as this Egyptian knowledge, this is basic knowledge. Everybody knows this. Okay, we got to move on though. So here we see the science that the Mesopotamians had. It wasn't even on the level of Greek science, and they're also way late with this middle of the 3rd millennium. All right, we see so far they had no real geographic unity, no permanent capital, and it stands out from other civilizations with greater uniformity like Egypt. And also, they weren't united until about 2800 BC, and then they were conquered from outsiders like Elamites. All right, we got to move on, man. And then, here we go. In the encyclopedia, you see what it says on the screen right here. Not a single general scientific law has been found, and only rarely has the use of analogy been found. Now, they had Pythagoras' law, which is yada yada yada, blah 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 on the longest side, but they never formulated it. And it was applied as early as the 18th century BC, which is way late. Okay, but what's important here is, here we have, no one can doubt the authority of the Encyclopedia Britainnica, okay? Now, look what they say. Not a single general scientific law has been found in Mesopotamia. No wonder the Caucasians downplay the achievements of the Egyptians, and then want to say they're white at the same time, then they want to be Egyptians too at the same time. They're suffering from that, all sorts of biases, because they can't reconcile that not only did the Nubians give birth to Egypt, and then it was demonstrated in public at Manchester University. Then you have Cambridge University talking about black Kemet. Then you have the British Museum talking about has every right to be considered African. And then they're using their teacher's notes to say that, along with all these scholars like Maria Gatto outright saying the Nubians gave birth to this. So we all know what the Egyptians have done. We all talk about the mysteries of Egypt, and look at Mesopotamia. This is proof that you guys have built these people up to be more than they were. Now there's no doubt they ended up doing some great things, but we got to be real here. Come on, look at this. Not a single general scientific law has been found, and only rarely has the use of analogy been found. Their idea of science was writing a bunch of numbers down endlessly, whereas the Egyptian idea of science was building pyramids that had coordinates that could be tied to the stars. Okay? And we have Nubians measuring the distances from the earth to the stars. So again, how's Mesopotamia influencing anything? Alright, I used the damn Encyclopedia Britainnica to show you that the Mesopotamian idea that you guys came up with is a pure joke. Alright, there. I just wanted to show you that the Egyptians were more advanced than they were. And not only that, they copied the Egyptians. We all know that. They copied tremendously. Alright. I stated in the previous video that, and I showed you plenty of pictures already on that. And then, when we look at what they left, when we compare their raggedy ziggurats that are nothing but piles of mud now. They built their own fake wall around that pile of junk over there in Iraq to hide the fact that it was a pile of dirt. And in the meantime, the pyramids are still over there, still standing, and still looking amazing, and are still huge. Okay? So we can't sit here and just lie anymore, you know? And so these people are using wheels and stuff. The Caucasians are the only people I know that are so proud that they had a wheel. Yeah, we had a wheel. You didn't have a wheel. We had a wheel. We had wagons. We had a wheel. Who gives a damn about your damn wheel? You want to know what them Africans did as soon as they got that wheel? They ran you over, then they made a picture running you over. Alright? That's what they did with them damn wheels. You guys are so proud to have a wheel. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because you can't be proud that you made a pyramid. You can't be proud that you mapped the stars, the distance between the earth and the stars. Instead, you want to be proud that you have a wheel. Why? Because these people are petty. This is why they're so insanely jealous and try to find anything to be proud of. This is why, also why white so-called Caucasians piggyback on Mesopotamian cultures. They don't have anything to do with Mesopotamian people in real life, but they'll sit behind a computer and connect themselves to them in all kinds of ways because they're riding on that motorcycle sidecar, piggybacking on other people's cultures. You know, that's why it's a joke. You talk about we want to be everybody's culture. For what? You know what I'm saying? We don't got to be nobody's culture. Look at what we got. You know? Look at what we got. So that's why you guys got to draw pictures. You got to draw your own pictures of Mesopotamian architecture all the time because it doesn't exist anymore. You got to make fake walls to hide the pile of dirt that you're hiding. And basically, at the end of the day, man, you know, when we look at what the Nile Valley Africans did, it makes what they did even more impressive. And we also know that we can definitively just throw in the trash this whole Mesopotamian thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like there were contacts and this and that for business, but they had no effect on the Egyptian social stratification and the culture that gave birth to the kingship. That has been established already. All right. Again, you need to watch my last video and the one before that. All right. That was established clearly. I demonstrated it across multiple disciplines, and I made Super Egyptian and Phoenician number 7 look like complete cartoons. Like their punishment is complete long time ago. So yeah, that's why I say black to Kemet. This is why the curator of the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology was at the Black to Kemet thing there at Cambridge, and was there with Dr. Shamarka. The guy you guys criticized was there too. He was there. You guys do realize that the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology is one of the original museums of Egyptian items and artifacts. You guys do realize that, right? Like, that was the stuff that Petrie and his people themselves pulled out the ground or stole or had at their house. It was all donated to the university college. You do understand that, right? And you understand that their curator at the time, Dr. Stephen Quirk, has written and spoken extensively about Black Egypt. You guys realize that shit, right? And it's like, you guys just still don't want to get it through your head. Why do you think they invited key African intellectuals to this stuff? To talk to people about Egypt's African heritage. They're not inviting Super Egyptian, I'm going to tell you that. And right here, ironically, in the same magazine, National Geographic, the exact same issue that had that horrible new face of King Tut. That was a slap in the face of everybody. The new face of King Tut. The new face of King Tut, everybody. The new face of King Tut. All right. In that same issue, they had an article in there about a certain group of Europeans, and An interesting line in there is this: by their own account, they are the lineal heirs of Attila the Hun, a link to the nomadic ancestry of most residents of Europe. A window on the Asian origins of what we now think of as Western civilization. National Geographic, June 2005. Frank Viviano. And again, this goes hand in hand with what I've been telling you, Eurocentrics, from day one, that your true origins lie in Asia, and that the Caucasian Mountains were your Western periphery. All right? You did not originate at the Caucasian Mountains. That was your Western periphery. Let's remember that. You were stretched across South Russia. That's why the earliest white skin is found in that area. That's why the blue eyes and all that comes from the area around the Black Sea, because that's where you guys were at over there. All right? Let's remember that. Okay? And look what National Geographic says. The nomadic ancestry of most residents of Europe. You weren't running around influencing Egyptian culture. You guys were nomads in Asia. We keep telling you people over and over again. Look at that. The Asian origins, what we now think of as Western civilization. Also, again, West Asia was passing all sorts of civilization and domestication information and all types of ideas to the white Europeans. They passed that to you. Okay? Let's remember that. All right? And again, this is more evidence that you guys were nomads and that you guys had absolutely nothing to do with Egypt. And that's why you guys make videos all day, because you can't stand it. It's like you hate yourselves. You know, so you want black people to hate yourselves, but that's too bad. We have a glorious history and you guys are just jealous, man. That's why you guys are frustrated. You know what I'm saying? So here we see this map right here, 4000 to 3000 BC, key period. Here we see as the kingship of Egypt was actively being born, this is what actual white people were doing. Okay? This is where you were at. This is what you were doing. This is Caucasian right here. From that area right there in the east, from the Proto-Turkic tribes, all the way up there to the Kukatini culture, that's white areas. That's your homeland. That's where you were at. That's what you were doing. And you guys need to get over that. All right? That's it. Then later, around 3500 BC, around there, that's when you started seeing the massive migrations moving around. But by that time, the Egyptian state was already established, and there's no reason for you guys to just migrate over there en masse anyway. And again, they stated many times already, even at the Manchester conference, that didn't happen. Okay, we now know that. Okay, you guys have your own cultural legacy over there, and because these cultures, when you take a look at them, there's nothing exciting going on over there. That's why you guys want to be Mesopotamians. That's why you guys want to be Indians. That's why you guys want to be Persians. That's why you guys want to be all type of shit. You know, you guys never lift up the Kukatini culture. You guys never lift up the Yamna culture. You guys never lift up the Pitcomb. Why? Because they got stupid sounding names and this shit is boring. You know what I'm saying? It's like we've tracked your movements. We know where you're at. You guys try to make the origins of these Indo-Europeans out to be mysterious when you know exactly where they came from. It's not that many damn areas where you could have came from, okay? So when we see this slide right here, we see a model of a Kukatini house. That is a true legacy of Europe right there, of white Caucasian people. Okay, we finally established, without using any fog is cleared now. We know who the Egyptians were now. Okay, so now we can identify what the Europeans were doing, and here you see it. Look at the archaeological finds discovered in Moldova in pre-dynastic times. You see that junk? I got that. I think I got that on Wikipedia. The caption described that as treasures or something like that were found. Okay, the author or whatever described those as treasures. You know, because everything that's found in Europe got to be a treasure, no matter how much of a piece of junk it looks like. All right, and as you look at all this stuff, it's highly unimpressive, and it's hard to claim superiority when your house, you know, it doesn't even have a door. You know, like when your roof is being held up by a stick. You feel me? Look at the distribution of the Germanic peoples by 750 BC. All right. We're already getting towards the twilight of Egyptian history, of the true Egyptian history. All right, In the meantime, the Nile Valley Africans, you know what I'm saying? You see those pyramids right there? It has been established by science beyond a doubt, to the point that they had to have a conference to talk about it. Okay? They got to have exhibitions to establish it. They got to send people out to tell them that you got to stop putting innuendos in the science books. They're retraining the damn museum volunteers now. Slowly but surely, it's a movement going on to let you know that Egypt is black now. Even Bette Midler said, "Dear Hollywood, Egypt was black." She said that. I know you read that somewhere. It's about that Gods of Egypt movie. But anyway, I don't want to get off track. So when you see these pyramids right here, and you see this Kukatini house, when you see the archaeological finds in Moldova, now you can see the contrast, okay? This is why I say that there's absolutely no reason for a black person to be jealous of anything European, absolutely whatsoever. For what? You guys are the ones that are jealous. That's why instead of talking about ancient Egypt, you have a channel dedicated to ancient Egypt, but you want to make videos about African Americans. What the fuck does that got to do with anything? Okay? How about teaching some Egyptian science? You don't want to teach Egyptian science because you're going to run straight back into Nubians, Ethiopians, and Nile Valley Africans again. And you can't stand it. Alright? So when we see this Egyptian governor right here on the right side, we know that's a black man. There's no more arguing these pictures anymore, that's for sure. Even the Fitzwilliam Museum will tell you that. Even the damn British Museum says the evidence is from tomb paintings and other objects. Alright? And so again, it's a great satisfaction if you're black right now and you're looking at that model of that house and looking at those pyramids. Okay? They try to say, oh, what did Africa contribute? What did Africa contribute to the world? They contributed that. Okay? What you guys contributed were these archaeological finds discovered in Moldova in 3650 BC. You see that shit? You guys put that up. We didn't put that there. That's your shit. Okay? And so again, this stuff is even worse than the Mesopotamian stuff too. You know what I'm saying? And so what that brings us to is a fantasy Egypt. That's why the Europeans are so obsessed with this fantasy Egypt. You know, it's like they want to be the Egyptians. They wish that they was them. They wish that they were so advanced as the Nile Valley Africans. It was just the penultimate of African knowledge, of just all put into a single point. That's what that was. Kemet and Kush are our versions of Greece and Rome, except thousands of years before that. You know? And it is just so incredibly satisfying after all these damn years of hating and lying. Finally, the truth comes out. You know what I'm saying? We could sit back satisfied, you know? So now, when I see these little Eurocentric videos, look at these comments, now I can just laugh. You know what I'm saying? Now I can just hit the back button, or I can just go to something else now. You know, when they try to say, oh, you're just jealous. I know that's a pure fantasy. And I'm definitely not jealous of no European shit. That shit is boring. That's why you guys look at our shit all the time. You know what I'm saying? And so, when the British Museum, again, it tells us it has every right to be considered African. Now you know. I mean, you can't say nothing to the British Museum. That's one of the damn original places where they took the damn Egyptian shit when they stole it from Africa. Okay? When they tell you that Egypt is less frequently studied as an African society and that the focus is on evidence from objects such as tomb paintings, then it's time to listen. Okay? And again, they always want to make sure that they're not messing with the sensibilities of Eurocentrics. And so at these museums sometimes, they gotta, you know, sort of use innuendos a little bit. But when you go to the learning resources, there you go. But we see that the tide is now turned though, and slowly but surely, it's gonna take some time, but eventually it's just gonna be a straight up black Egypt. And there ain't nothing that Super Egyptian Phoenician number 7 is gonna do. You know, it's nothing their little 2,000 views is gonna do to change the pillars of Egyptology. I'm sorry. Only friends that they got are the people commenting and their Eurocentric Egyptologists that are still desperately, you know, who have now switched tactics and want to try to accredit everything to Lower Egypt now, which we all know is a damn lie. We know Upper Egypt is the heart of the Egyptian Empire. And so, you guys go on the website, instead of showing the true Egypt, you notice that now they always want to show some Roman stuff. You know what I'm saying? Again, because that's the only white legacy part of Egypt that they got, is that. You know, that's why Super Egyptian Phoenician number 7, they're always showing that type of stuff all the time. Because it's all they got. And again, that's your little section of Egypt. But just remember, you didn't originate that, all right? You guys copied and you turned it into something goofy, and that was hardly Egyptian, all right? And so I suggest people get educated. You know that Manchester, they have a 3-year course, online course to get a certificate in Egyptology. And the classes start on October 1st, 2016. You might want to take a look at that, Eurocentrics, because you guys are coming with all this fake science. Don't make no sense, but whatever. And so now that Sir William Matthew Flinders Petrie has finally gotten the karma that he deserves, that's why the damn school that he taught at and the damn museum named after him had a damn curator who straight up said black to Kemet and supported it. Man, I find that type of stuff to be just pure, just divine providence almost. You got University College London, you know what I'm saying, publishing papers talking about you can link Egypt's early development to the Sudan. You got scholars coming out of there, man, saying that. Again, you guys are just mad, man, that the Nubians and the Egyptians were the same damn people. It's been established. We all know now that the Egyptians made their artifacts any damn way they felt like making it, and that there's absolutely no more need to argue a damn picture anymore. Yeah, like, for one, that's one thing that I learned when I started this channel is, first of all, there's no need to argue a damn picture anyway, because that's an amateur move, you know? So, when you take a look at this picture right here, and you see these Nubians, you see these Egyptians right here, just remember that these people were brothers and sisters. They came from the same population, and they had a sibling rivalry. That is literally what it is, all right? That was completely established on my previous videos, and most especially part 1 and part 2 of this series. That part 1 and part 2 of this series was damning, man. All right, it really was. It just put it all together. You know, so when we see romantic photos like this, it's like, man, it's like that pyramid right there. It just represents absolutely everything African. Just to know that the Nubians are responsible for the entire pastoral tradition of Africa. And we also know that those African cattle represent the king and the power of the king and social stratification. That's why they have so much value there. Okay? And again, that whenever you see an African with his damn cattle, I want you to think of those pyramids and think of the Nile Valley Africans, man, and how those people sprung up from the same population that we all sprung from. All right? And that's why this is a legacy first of the Nile Valley, legacy first of our Sudanese people, and the Ethiopians, and the South Egyptians, but also secondarily of all African people. That's why they put the Black Power comb next to the pre-dynastic comb from Abydos. Because that doesn't just represent African Americans, it represents all of us, everybody, the diaspora and the entire African continent. You know, same people that you said were pure Negroid, super Egyptian, yep, they gave birth to that pyramid right there. And so, you guys haven't presented absolutely any evidence. You have no answer for what I've brought you over the past 2 months. The shutdown is just utter, it's complete, and your punishment, it will just keep going and going and going, on and on. I can keep going like this all day, you know? So it's very satisfying to shut you people down, okay? And so before I go, just remember, at that conference, Folorunso, he said, observe the evidence that shows the biological connection between ancient Egyptians and tropical African people. And remember the tropical African influence on ancient Egypt. Okay? Let's remember that. Let's remember now why they say that the Nagata and the Kerma series are so similar that they are barely distinguishable in the territorial maps, and they subsume the first dynasty from Abydos. And it's like Maria Gatto said, Abydos, all that stuff, it was Nubian before it was Egyptian. And then through a mixing and through time, it became Egyptian later, you see. And it's all very satisfying. But it's too bad, freaks. You were living over in Europe. You were spreading around over there. You were doing that. That's your destiny over there. You guys need to find whatever culture over there. You know, there is really no glory over there for that time period. You guys just had to wait. I mean, it wasn't your time to shine yet. I'm sorry, man. Especially Western Europeans. I feel sorry for you because you guys couldn't do anything until about Charlemagne and all that. But hey, and even then, you guys still had a long time ago. We already know you were living filthy with rats. High heels were invented so that you wouldn't walk in your own shit. But, you know, that's for We Was Kings Part 2. We will be coming up with that. But, yeah, like I said, it's all very satisfying. And so, now we know, when we look at Narmer, and we see him with that mace head in his hand, and when we look at the throne of Egypt, and we say these are two black people sitting right here on this throne, we know that no European at the height of Egyptian glory sat on that throne. There's no evidence now. It has been completely established. Phoenician number 7 lied to me and said science established this when they've had multiple exhibitions and conferences and many papers written that explicitly said that it is an African legacy. And now Dr. Ashton, she has a blog devoted to that. And this woman is highly respected. Again, there's nothing like that exists for anything European and Egyptian together. Absolutely whatsoever. Give it up. That's why we laugh in your face. That's why we make fun of you on the videos. You know what I'm saying? That's why Radio 1 makes fun of you, Phoenician number 7, because you're a joke. That's why I say Super Egyptian is a clown. He's literally Ronald McDonald. But, you know, I'm about done here, guys. Until next time.